why in the world are all these millions and millions and millions of people taking a test to find out what kind of dog they are? People love to learn more about themselves, and they love to be understood.
I'm here today with Jackie Insinger. She is the best-selling author of Spark Brilliance. She's a renowned leadership coach with a master's from Harvard and a BA from Duke. What is the difference between traditional psychology and positive psychology?
Picturing a number line, right? Negative numbers to the left, positive numbers to the right, 0 in the middle. And 0 is our baseline, like our neutral, our normal. Traditional psychology is the study of the dips into the negative numbers and how to get back to 0, right? How to fix what's broken or how to heal what's wrong. And that is so critical and so important. And it's not taking away from that at all, but there's this whole other side of the number line, right? Where what I believe like our brilliance lives, that's where our potential lies.
You're listening to the Real Business Connections Network. Real Business Connections Network. Powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. Subscribe now and check us out at realbusinessconnections.com. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, once again to Learn, Speak, Teach on the Real Business Connections Network. I'm here today with Jackie Insinger. Jackie, what's happening? How are you?
Good to see you. Great to be here.
Dude, I'm excited to chat with you. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. Spark Brilliance, your book, I thought was brilliant, right in the title.
Thank you.
And for anyone who doesn't know Jackie, she is the best-selling author of Spark Brilliance. She's a renowned leadership coach with a master's from Harvard and a BA from Duke. She transforms great leaders into extraordinary ones using her understanding of positive psychology, neuroscience, and her platinum leadership framework. I'm excited to have you. One thing that I wrote down from your book was the line, leadership is connection. Leadership is connection. Seems like a good place to start. What does that mean to you?
That's a great place to start. There's so many things it means to me, but I think that the easiest starting point is most people move into leadership roles because they're excellent at managing things, right? So you're great at managing your work, you're excellent at your job, and you get promoted. That's the telling point, right? Someone is excellent at managing these things, so they get promoted. Managing things and leading people are extraordinarily different skill sets, right? And leading people is about that connection. It's about how do I tune into, how do I recognize what you need, how to motivate you, how to connect with you, what makes you feel valued, what is it that lights you up, that moves you into an extraordinary place where you're performing high, where you're fulfilled, all of those things, very different than managing things. And so part of it is, kind of pulling those two things apart around being excellent at managing things and being excellent at leading people. And that's so much where the focus is on. To be successful as a leader, you have to be able to lead people, not just manage things. You lead the people that manage the things, right? And so differentiating that is a really key place.
And you've worked with huge organizations. Do you find that a lot of people in leadership roles are kind of managers and they need help with the leading of people, the connection aspect?
All across the board. Yes, it is everywhere. And what we see is 9 out of 10 people do not have the innate leadership ability, like the leading people skill set. The average team size is 10 people. The person who gets promoted is because they're great at managing the things, right? So 9 out of 10 times, the leader of this team does not have the innate ability to lead people. So we're looking at 90% of leaders do not have the innate skill set. So we need to just train them. And that's the thing, is they need to learn how. And if they learn how and they're willing to learn, you can excel at leading people. But 9 out of 10 times, you don't know how to do it. And so that's where the gap is you just need to train. Just like you train someone how to do a job, you need to train them how to lead people. And then you can be excellent. But that's where the gap lies.
Yeah, we can all be excellent. It's funny, I cut my teeth getting started in marketing in a sales role, and there's like an old adage that the sales manager is the best salesperson, and usually the best salesperson isn't necessarily the best leadership or manager. However, they can learn and they can train. And I want to go deep with you, but I want to step back to get a little bit of context. So, like, you went to Harvard and Duke, but that's not where you started. Like, where did your interest in connection and leadership and authenticity, like, where did that brilliance begin? Where did it all start?
It's as far back as I can go, honestly. Since I was a really little girl, I was always like obsessed really with how people act, react, and interact. Like, why is this person nice in this situation? Why is this person getting mean here? Why did this one react happy to what I said? And why is this person not liking what I said? And just watching behavior and interactions and people always fascinated me, and how to, since I was little, really helping people navigate problems and work through conflict. And that's always been something I've really been interested in and really good at. Not my own conflict, though, which leads actually to part of this was ever since I was little, also, I was a people pleaser and really cared so much about how people felt about me and that I was liked and that everybody was okay with me, right? So much of that watching reactions and interactions was making sure, like, is this okay? Does this feel right? How is this landing with this person? Did I say it in a way that they received it the way I meant it? And just in that coping mechanism of being a pleaser, part of it was a skill set that was developed in tandem with this interest of how do you read people? How do you have more meaningful and effective relationships ultimately? And studying that side of how do we think, how do we perceive things, how do we show up, and how do we have more effective relationships with people based on understanding their understanding, right? So that's something that's always been part of me since I was little, and diving into that more to understand it in a deeper way that I can use, right? So I can make it actionable has been always a focus of mine.
Love it. Love it. Mm-hmm. How did that lead into a career in this? When did you make that step that this is what I want to study? This is actually my calling? Or did you go in the wrong direction? Or I want to take my words back, not the wrong direction, just a different direction, a different path. Well, how did the education journey start?
So always knew I wanted to study psychology because it's always a fascination. Even in the summers as a kid, would do internships like in high school with severely emotionally disabled kids, or studying something where I can learn about people and behavior, trying to figure out which angle I wanted to take. Very quickly realized when working with the severely emotionally disabled kids that it was hard. It was so heart-wrenching for me that I could not separate myself. Like, I would cry myself to sleep at night. Like, I couldn't even get the thoughts and the knowledge of what they were going home to out of my head. And I realized then, like, some people are so gifted at being able to help people in those situations and still be able to function. I couldn't do that. So knowing I wanted to be involved with people and dynamics and bringing something really positive to them, but trying to find out what that place was that actually also was something that fulfilled me, was a focus since I was younger as well. So studied psychology, knew that was going to happen. However, did take a wrong turn, which, was a big lesson for me, where we had on-campus recruiting every spring, like a lot of colleges do. And every year, never paid attention because it was all the big accounting firms and the investment banks would all come to campus trying to find the seniors who are wanting to take those 80 to 100-hour work weeks that no one else wants, right? So I never paid attention. And then my senior year, I, to my own surprise, was all of a sudden deep in the interview process with investment banks. And my inner critic was on fire, right? Like, I should really work at an investment bank. Like, this should really, set me up for success and going
pays well, wealthy.
Yeah. What would I think to not take this? I should. And I don't know if you've heard the term, like I was shooting all over myself, right? It was like that, that point. And, there I was 3 months later working at an investment bank in New York City. And I was miserable, absolutely miserable. Like, I only was interacting with numbers, not people. And, never even saw my roommate. And I'm very quick to know when I'm not happy. And I noticed so fast, like, what did I just do? And there was a life-changing moment in this story where I had a 20-minute lunch break, and I was like it's going, as fast as I could, New York walk to the corner deli, and it was 23rd and Park Avenue. And I saw my reflection in the window, and I just looked at myself, and I was a mess, just like exhausted, just done. Right. And I just start sobbing on that street corner. Like, what did I do? I feel stuck. I'm miserable. And, everybody in New York, if anyone's lived or been to New York, people are rushing and racing and knocking into you. Nobody notices or cares that you're just standing there sobbing. It's kind of like another day and just another day.
It's another sobbing crazy girl.
Exactly. And then there was a man who was homeless, who was camping in front of the deli. He got up, he walked over to me, put his arm around me, looked me right in the eye and said, "It's going to be okay." And that was the moment that I realized, like, oh, I have a choice. Like, this job is a choice. My happiness is a choice. And I get to decide what happens now. And I went upstairs and I quit on the spot. Probably not the smartest thing because I didn't have a backup plan, but it was still that moment where I realized, like, wait, I can control this. Like, I have a choice, and this is a choice. And that's where I realized at that moment, I have to find that spark in myself, that place. What I talk about is your spark, like where your talent and passion intersect. And that became that next path. There were moments along that next phase too, because all that meant at that point did not dictate what that was going to look like, just more that I had to figure that out. I think that was that tipping point of that story, of the wrong turn that put me on the right path. But there was a moment in graduate school that did, again, I have a series of moments. I don't know if you look at your life this way. In retrospect, I find these like moments that mattered, I call them, where things lead up to different times and different situations, but there's always this moment that matters, that I just feel it in my whole body, like, oh, that's what this was for. And then it kind of sets me on a new trajectory. And I just have this series that I could look back in my life of these moments that matter. Do you have that? Is that just me?
I don't know if I feel that calling the way you describe it, but I journal every day. And a lot of times those moments look like pieces of crap with a bow on top, and I don't realize. So I don't know if I feel it the way you're describing it, but I can recognize it afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, I connected to the crying and seeing yourself story because I would do morning affirmations, and I got to a point where I was looking myself in the mirror and I thought I was a liar because I would affirm these things about myself, but my hungover, bloodshot eyes told me the opposite. And I realized that if my actions weren't aligned with who I thought I could become, I wouldn't get anywhere. But I didn't feel it. I guess I do. You've got to be very introspective.
Yeah, maybe notice next time.
Yeah.
Sometimes pay attention. Maybe you do have it in the moment, and it maybe can fast track some of them.
Well, so it seemed like you even mentioned you were shooting all over yourself.
Yeah.
Is it fair to assume that the people around you were shooting on you as well? Like, everybody was telling Jackie what she should do, and then you started to have these moments. What was the next one? We kind of paused there.
Yeah. And just to reflect on where other people, I feel very grateful. My parents really focused on my happiness. It was like, we just want you to be happy. We just want you to be happy. Even when I started Duke, it's very like not normal what you hear from a lot of people of like, well, you really have to step up your game now because now you're not the top of your class anymore. Everybody's the top of their class. My parents took the opposite approach. They were like, C's are good here. They're like, you worked your butt off, and now, everybody there is the top of their class. You are do you have to take the pressure off of yourself because you can't be the top there all the time. Right. And it was this interesting, like, average is good at a place like this because everybody's at the top. And it was an interesting, different perspective that was really supportive of that. Cause I think they knew I was my own harshest critic. I had it in myself to strive that hard. It was a very intrinsic based motivation. So that was an interesting side note around that. I think that's why I could quit my job on the spot there too, because I wasn't worried about them being disappointed in me. They instead were like, well, maybe a little concerned with the timing, but proud of me for doing something that would make myself happy.
They that was like emotional safety to make that decision.
Yeah, very supportive of that. So the second big moment, or it wasn't really second in our conversation, was So in graduate school, so I went and designed a master's up at Harvard in a self-designed program. And it was really, where I focused was cognitive psychology and interpersonal dynamics. And you get to study with the founders of all of these fields and contribute to their field of research. So to me, it was like all my heroes. So I got to study under a famous psychologist. Her name's Dr. Eleanor Duckworth. I was super excited. So first day of class, we all walk in and she hands everybody an identical journal. And we go sit down and she says to us, in addition to your coursework, every single night, I want everybody to look at the moon and either write a poem about it, draw a picture of it or find something new to say about it every single night. I am extraordinarily artistically challenged. Like I can't draw anything. My poems sound like nursery rhymes. So I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so set up for failure here. But 105 moons, here we come, right? So end of the semester, our journals are collected and we show up to our last lecture in this enormous lecture hall. And the whole place is wallpapered with our journal entries, like floor to ceiling, edge to edge. It was like a kaleidoscope, right, of moons everywhere. And Dr. Duckworth says, you learned a lot from my class this semester, but if there's one thing you take away, it's this. In just 3 months, you found thousands of ways to see one single object that we all thought was seen in one way. What I'm trying to teach you is the power of understanding somebody else's understanding. And that moment, that's where I got like the whole rush of chills through my body, where I knew like, wow, right? I like this whole semester was based on just to get this at the deepest level of something that we look at and we think, oh, well, everybody sees it this way. It's like a static object, right? Imagine if you add emotional charge. Imagine if you add the story and the history and the experience and the color that we bring to anything that carries emotion or personalization. And here's just a static object that we saw in thousands of ways. So that's where it was like, okay, I don't want to just understand somebody's understanding. I want to learn how to honor it and then leverage it to be more effective and meaningful in our relationships. And that moment set me off on my next phase.
Talk about the platinum rule.
Mm-hmm. The platinum rule. That all came together right at that same time too, from that same class. The golden rule, we all know, treat others the way we wish to be treated. And it doesn't work. And it doesn't work. It works well in large societies more because it's like what not to do, right? What's off limits. But in real relationships, right, who's to say, Ben, that you want to be treated the way I want to be treated, or that you want support the way I want support, or you like feedback the same way I want feedback, or, I always use the joke, like my 13-year-old son is going to want, a glass of wine and some one-on-one time with one of my best friends after a tough week, right? It doesn't work. So the platinum rule is treat others the way they wish to be treated. And that's the way to start having these meaningful and effective relationships. And it's a mindset shift, right? Because when people hear that, they're like, well, yeah, of course. It's like a duh, right? But nobody thinks about it. And so part of the journey of leadership and of any relationships, in my mind, is how do you want to be treated? And asking those basic questions that we neglect to ask, right? I mean, how many people have asked you, like, how do you like to be supported, right? How do you like feedback? What does happy mean to you? And like, what does help look like on a tough morning? Like, people don't ask these questions, and they're the most basic questions to ask to start understanding somebody on the level to have, a relationship where people are getting truly what they want.
So is this something that I should one-to-one be asking my friends, neighbors, colleagues? Can this be integrated into like a survey, a happiness survey, or a poll for my team? What are some of the tangible ways that we can actually put this to use?
Yeah, and I have a list of questions, and even questions like that to understanding somebody else's platinum. Like in the back of the first chapter of my book, there's always action steps to take, and it's just a series of questions.
And I will put that in the show notes just so you and everyone knows. I personally read it and listened to the Audible together because I just learn best when I can do both at once. So that's in the notes. And a lot of this is in the book, but please go ahead. I just wanted people to know about that.
Thank you. So with these questions, I think when you have an ongoing relationship with somebody, to sit down during a one-on-one, if you have a team, and take 15 minutes out of one of your one-on-ones to ask those series of questions. And what's fascinating is I just yesterday was working with, through this leadership program I do, there was this head of engineering for a big energy company, and he has a team of male engineers, and he was a little like resistant to asking these questions of like, how do you feel valued? How do you most feel supported? This, he's like, oh, they're just gonna like roll their eyes and stuff. And he came back and he's like, I can't believe their reaction. They were all like, I've never been asked this before.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you for wanting to know this, but can I have some time to think about this? Because I really want to have the most thoughtful answer. He said every single one of them was so happy that he cared enough to ask these questions, much less before he even had an opportunity to do anything with the answers. It's the idea people want to feel valued, and going back to that leadership is connection where you started, right? People want to feel that connection. And in fact, a big study done by Microsoft Work Index found that 85% of people say the number one thing they want from their leader is authenticity, right? So you think about, I mean, that's a huge number. 85% of people say the number one thing they want. And according to Forbes, 66% of people overall and 76% of millennials say they'll leave if they don't feel valued by their leader. So you put those things together, feeling valued and this authentic connection. And how do you give that to people as a leader? Most leaders are like, I don't even know what that means. Like, how does that really show up in real life? You know, how you want to feel valued is different than how I want to feel valued. And if people will leave if they don't feel valued, then if I do it the wrong way, even with the best of intention, you're going to leave. Right. So that's one of those things that we just need to be mindful of as leaders, is asking these questions and getting curious.
It's so profound. You made me realize I used to do this. I stopped doing it. But before the podcast interview, tell me if this is good. Just asking the question, like, what does a fantastic interview look like for you?
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
Because
it might be different.
It's different for everybody, you know, and I try to feel my guest and go from there. But you've got the wheels turning in my brain right now. And I love that. So I veer off the story. This is kind of how the brain works. So you're having a lot of these aha moments, and you decide, I'm going to up and quit. And you had the safety that your family taught you, that happiness is important, and you felt emotionally safe, and you're making this move. Was it sunshine and rainbows? Like, what did you do next? That's like a really difficult place to be in. Generally, we don't recommend people just up and quit their jobs. What did you do? Like, what was next?
So the New York investment banking happened before graduate school.
Got it.
So
and then you went to graduate school.
So then I went to graduate school, and that's where my path became much more directed in an upward trajectory toward where I wanted to go, but it was super squiggly.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, it started with this awesome, cool job where these two guys from Harvard Business School had a business project that worked on through business school. And it's like, let's just make this into a company. So they brought in, there were 7 of us total. And if you've heard of Mel Robbins, who is like a famous speaker, she was one of the 7 of us. And she had just graduated from one of the Harvard graduate schools too. And we all came together in a basement. And this was a company at the time called eMode that was to create entertainment-based assessments to uncover human motivation. So I was head of content. So I was writing all the tests, which to me at the time was like, sure, figure it out. Whatever that means, let's figure it out. So the first test I wrote was, what breed of dog are you? And it's still like circulating today a bit on social media, which is really funny. So this is January of 2000. So I'm totally dating myself.
Yeah.
That's when it was. And this was at a time where AOL was like the only email. And a website meant there was just some page sitting on the web that you saw, but you had no idea where it existed, how people found it. You know, there was no social media. So we put up this quiz on this static page and had no idea, right? That was that. Cool, done. Next test. Let me go on to the next one. All of a sudden, within 2 weeks, the New York Times called us. Howard Stern called us. All these people, they're like, what are you guys doing? We're like, what are you talking about? And that ended up, that dog test was the most clicked on link in the world. And people were cutting and pasting that link from AOL email to AOL email. And it just was going around it landed on 1 million unique clicks is what they measured by per day. That's how many people were taking this test. So very soon after, this venture capital firm from San Francisco was like, whatever you kids are up to, we want to come watch you. So we want you to move to San Francisco. So they moved us out to San Francisco. And I wrote about 100 of those tests, all entertainment-based, fun stuff to uncover people's decisions and what they meant and what that meant about them. my big takeaway from that, which was another big moment that mattered, was, wow, why in the world are all these millions and millions and millions of people taking a test to find out what kind of dog they are, or what's their walk-up song, or what cocktail they are, or like, all these silly things. Like, why is this? And what I learned from it is people love to learn more about themselves, and they love to be understood, and they love to have others understand them, to share ways. It's like, here's another way for you to see me. Here's another avatar, another word, another term for you to understand me. And it doesn't have to feel hard to connect. And that was my big takeaway. It's like, it can be fun. It could be positive. It doesn't have to be these deep, hard ways of revealing yourself to have connections. Like, we can share and learn and understand and be understood in a way that feels fun and positive. And so that was my big takeaway from that. And that's where I met my husband, moved to Denver to be with him, which is where I am now, about how to start a private practice around leaders and teams, and how do we, really honor differences and leverage strengths to be a more effective dynamic.
I love it. You are, I think you might be the exact reason that every elder family member in my life would send me these emails where they would link me to these like different surveys and different things. I just remember every time I got an email from a family member, it would be something like that. And that I've taken a few. Do you remember what kind of dog you are?
I was a golden retriever.
You're a golden retriever?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that. And because people do want to learn about themselves, they want to better themselves, they want to be positive. I think it's a good time to talk about positive psychology. Is weirdly enough kind of a new concept. I think you explain it incredibly well in the book, but give us the simplified version. Like, what is the difference between traditional psychology and positive psychology, which is, it's got positive in it. It's a little more uplifting than possibly the traditional approach was.
Yes, I agree. And so the way that I describe it that seems to resonate, which I think is what you're referring to, is picturing a number line, right? Negative numbers to the left, positive numbers to the right, 0 in the middle. And 0 is our baseline, like our neutral, our normal. Traditional psychology is the study of the dips into the negative numbers and how to get back to 0, right? How to fix what's broken or how to heal what's wrong. And that is so critical and so important. And it's not taking away from that at all, but there's this whole other side of the number line, right? Where what I believe, like, our brilliance lives. That's where our potential lies, because the absence of sadness is not happiness. The absence of sickness is not health. The absence of poor performance is not great performance, right? Baseline, getting back to baseline, that's a starting point where all the great things start. So much of our focus, and over the past bunch of years, how many times have you heard or even said, I just want things to get back to normal, right? Yeah. During all the COVID, I just want things to get back to normal. It's like, was normal that awesome? Like, why are we just wanting things to get back to normal? Like, when you think back on your normal, was it like, oh my God, everything's perfect? No, right? Normal's not perfect. Normal is not a stopping point. We want to get to normal to break through to this other side that's limitless. So that's the side of positive psychology. And that's where I love to focus. It doesn't mean, though, we don't dip into the negative numbers. We do all the time. The goal is, though, when we dip into those negative numbers, to have an awareness around it and not decide to get back to normal, but say, how do I fix this? What's an opportunity to move forward? What are actions that I can take to make progress to get into that positive side of the number line? It's not stopping to get back to normal. And so that's the big focus of positive psychology. Does that explain it well to you? Like, does that make sense?
It does. And tell me if this is correct, because this wasn't in the book, I don't think, but it's one thing I've learned is you'll go on a vacation and you'll have a wedding, or go to a wedding, you'll have these great things, and then your fulfillment levels, the happiness you feel will rise, but then it will sometimes rather quickly return back to baseline. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, how do I just raise that? Is that the concept of brilliance, just truly raising that baseline? You tell me.
I think happy, the way that I differentiate, this is probably not a definition. Brene Brown would be the perfect one to ask about these things, but the difference between happiness and joy, right? Happiness is like a fleeting feeling to me. Like, I'm really happy in this moment, or I'm so happy at this comedy club, or I'm so happy I get to see this friend. But joy to me is something that's a little more stable. The part that you want to build that joy in your life, which is in my mind takes a little more discipline, right? To build that joy, to focus on how do I incorporate more joy into my life, the things that make me happy, so that your baseline for happiness is a different starting point, because happiness can come and go. You could feel happy, you could feel sad, you could be frustrated, but joy to me is a different feeling. And this might fully be something I make up in my head about what that means, but that's what it means to me personally, is to kind of, and with a lot of my clients, I'm always like, just try to find 10 minutes a day to do something that brings you joy, to start building up, to light that spark in you, to like ignite the little sunshine that we all carry around, that sometimes we shine bright and sometimes it's dulled. But the more we focus on it like a muscle and incorporate it and build that up, the more you feel that, and that becomes a more consistent part of you. But that also takes a little discipline. It's not something that happens to you, in my opinion.
That makes total sense. And you're brilliant at discussing this, talking about gratitude and even like play in the workplace. Talk about how we can start with ourselves, like bring more joy into our lives. And then step 2 is spreading it along with the team, bringing joy with our team members, our family members, our colleagues, our clients. Start with us and then go to the team.
Which I love that you just said that, because first line and last line of my book is it begins with you, right? So start with us and then bring it to the team. And that's always say it begins with you and it continues with them. So it always starts with you. You have to do the work yourself as a leader, and a leader in your life, a leader in your work. So it begins with you. Part of that is, incorporating some form of joy into your day, whatever that looks like for you. There's no judgment. Minimum 10 minutes. Be intentional about focusing on bringing yourself that joy. I think that's a really important piece. The second thing around that is this concept, and this is kind of the bridge, I guess, between the two, the concept of emotional contagion. And I know we've talked about this before, and it's probably my favorite thing to talk about, because it's so powerful and people don't know how powerful it is until they hear it. And it can be game changing for so many people and the people they interact with. So emotional contagion, just like it sounds, is the spontaneous spread of emotion from person to person or through a group, which could be a very good thing or a very bad thing, depending on what we're spreading.
So like a smile or a yawn, would that fall in that category?
It does. And it's even faster than that. So it's 33 milliseconds. That's all it takes for our brain to read and identify someone's emotions and take it on. So studies show, put 3 complete strangers in a room. They have no idea they're being studied. Whoever has the strongest emotion will spread to the other 2, good or bad. So it is just spreading whoever has the most powerful emotion. And what's interesting is, from a leader perspective, not only does your emotion or outlook is included in this too, your emotion or outlook spread to the layer below you, but the layer below them, which means people you might not even interact with at all will take on your mood and your outlook and emotion by how you choose to show up in less than a second. So this idea, this opportunity, right? Yes, responsibility, but more so an opportunity to decide, what do I want to spread? What mood and outlook and emotion do I want my team or my family, my friends to take on in this moment? You get to decide. Like, how cool is that? So inserting this pause, being intentional. And what's amazing to me, because I'm a data nerd, is big studies by Harvard Business Review show when you have a positive outlook, which is spreadable 2 layers from you, productivity goes up 31%, sales go up 37%, profits up to 50%, and the negative impact of stress goes down 23%. So just by how you click your camera when you show up to your Zoom meeting, and then you turn it off, and that's what people are left with from you for the day or the afternoon. And you can impact their productivity, the sales, the stress levels, everything by how you decide what you decide to spread in that moment. So that's the bridge between like your emotion, your outlook, and how that impacts others. And then how do you have them then, take on more sustainable positive shift is the second piece.
This is really powerful. One thing that's bothering me a little bit is, let's say you're in a scenario where someone has very strong emotional contagion that isn't the kind of work environment you want. Maybe they've had a bad day. They're incredibly stressed. They're resentful. I don't know. How do you navigate those difficult conversations? Because you can come in with your good energy, positive energy. You just journaled, you're ready to go, you're happy to be there, but they're bringing others down and possibly you down as well. And
Mhm.
that doesn't mean they're a bad person. We don't know what they're going through, but how do I navigate that situation? Because I've been a Debbie Downer. I almost call like a Benny Browner. I don't know what I was thinking. I've been a downer before, and I've been in scenarios like that. I don't always know how to navigate those
Yeah, yeah.
situations. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think it depends on the dynamic, because a power dynamic is different than a peer dynamic.
Mm,
So, for instance, if it's a peer and they're coming into work and they're grumpy and annoyed and negative or stressed, I always say tune in, lean in, ask, hey, is there anything I could support you with today? Any way I can help? Um, and sometimes just that can either give an opportunity for somebody to share something and get it off their chest, or sometimes that can even just shift the mood because you're entering with a positive intent and a positive attitude and outlook. That can also diffuse some of that feeling that they're putting outward, or an opportunity for them to resolve or help resolve or vent is number one. Another thing is just the understanding of emotional contagion is so important when somebody comes in negative
hmm.
and powerful with their negative to say the strongest emotion wins, right? And I am deciding not to I almost picture like if you picture like a bubble, like a little shield, like a clear shield around you when you notice somebody's negative energy, and just saying, I'm not going to let this in. Like I have to protect my energy. Like that's their energy. This is my energy. And making the intentional decision to notice that, because what usually happens is it infuses in, it filters in, and you don't know what's yours and what somebody else's anymore, right? So being able to separate that up front, like, oh, I feel this, and I'm not going to let it like infuse into my energy and get mixed up and muddled. So instead, I'm going to stay in my space and make a decision to not let it. And I think that can help a ton, because I'm going to add on one more thing that's super powerful to me is that if you let yourself get worked up or angry for even 2 minutes, it can take 7 hours for that to leave your system. Yeah.
Explain that. So, like,
yeah.
let's say, for example, I wake up, I look at my phone, I'm triggered. Is that why I just had a bad day?
If you let yourself get really worked up, it's one thing to be frustrated and annoyed. It's another thing if you let it, like, literally think about all the stress hormones that are flying out all over your body and what's happening to you physiologically in those moments. To have that fully go away, it takes a while. And the way that I always think about it is like a teenager, like I have two teenage boys now. And if they walk in the house and you feel that like disgruntled teenage energy and you engage with it, right?
Yeah.
And you get worked up and angry and take on that secondhand stress, it sits with you and it shifts your whole energy field and it shifts your stress levels. And then you start spinning about anything that could be going wrong, right? And it's so hard to get back to that positive, happy, more pure flow state that you might have been in before. So noticing it, you're not going to change how that person shows up, especially if it's a teenager, right? So they might still come in with that disgruntled energy, but you can decide to not mix your energy with their energy and engage in that negative energy space. And still it's like, great, when you're ready to come down and talk to me, I'd love to hear about your day, and decide, right? And so much of it is about being intentional about where you're going to put your energy.
So you're making an intentional decision. This isn't toxic positivity that everything's sunshine and rainbows. It's more so mindfulness in the moment to be able to acknowledge it and then make a conscious decision not to welcome it, not welcome that contagion into your field, if that makes sense.
Yes, completely. And I talk a lot about, because a lot of people think positive psychology is like, just think positive. It's all going to be okay. If you only focus on the butterflies, like everything's beautiful. No, right? I call it practical optimism, which is let's look at reality. Like we don't have the luxury of denial, right? We can pretend we do, but we really don't. Let's look at reality and then looking toward the future, thinking, what are some possibilities in this situation? What are some opportunities in this challenge, right? And the belief that we can figure it out. And when you come from that place of optimism, that's where you access that part of your brain where you see possibilities, you see opportunities. You're not stuck in the place where your cortisol goes up and it's basically a wall to your rational brain, right? You can't access solutions and positive thoughts. You're stuck. So we want to get to this place where we're like, yeah, this sucks in this moment. I see it. I see what's going on. And what can I do about it? What actions can I take? What can I control here? What are my choices? What are some solutions? Who can I get myself around to help me through this? Who do I recruit for my people that can help with this? And so it's that thinking process and attitude and outlook is what really can shift things.
That's what makes the shift. Jackie, I really appreciate we took your story, but we're dissecting simple concepts in such a complex way. And I really appreciate you going deep with me. We're going to fast forward to now. And I'm just curious, like, I want you to wave the flag if you need to. You've done amazing things. Like, who do you get to help? What have you been up to? What's new and exciting? Like, what's bringing you joy? That was like 6 questions, but the real question is like, how are things going? Who are you helping? And is there any way we can get involved?
Oh, thank you. I'm finding so much joy right now because I think with my squiggly line and the squiggly path we've talked about, I'm landed right now. Who knows where I'll be in 2 years, but right now I'm thrilled with where I am. And I've been working for like 15 years pretty much to build a really robust leadership development program. And the past 2 years is where I've been really focused on refining it to what's current. And it's an immersive leadership development program that takes a minimal amount of time with a maximum ROI. All the results are measured for the company. It's a cohort-based program, and it takes them through how to be a successful leader today, using all of these things that we know people need and want in the world to be successful, to be fulfilled, to perform at their peak, and to stay at their job, to really be there. And when you're talking about 4 different generations in the same workplace, it's pretty intense for leaders, and leaders are burned out. Over 60% of leaders say they're burned out right now. And how when I'm burned out, can I help and inspire and motivate you, team, when you're overwhelmed and burned out too? Like, people are at a loss, and the pace of change right now, like, nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows how to lead, especially when you're burned out and overwhelmed and trying to meet your own numbers, right? So that's where this program comes in, is it simplifies the messy. It gives you the exact how-tos and when-tos to really become a positive, fulfilled leader in today's world, and bringing your team along with you in the way that feels best for them in a really simplified way. And so it's been super fun, and the results have been awesome. So that's my love. That's my life right now. That's my passion. And yeah, that's where I'm focused.
Let me grab my pen. Jackie, what do I do next? Well, where do I go? What do I do? How do I find it?
The program through me. Right now it's offered through companies. So a cohort in a company, a cohort of leaders. So I'm working B2B with companies. So anybody who has a company who thinks this would be a good fit for their leaders, the results have been spectacular. Would love to go in and do that with your company. I also am thinking about doing a cohort of individual leaders who want to join together from different companies and launch that. So if anybody's interested, emailing me is the best way. So it's just Jackie at sparkbrilliance.com, JACKIE at sparkbrilliance.
So I assume that's the website, sparkbrilliance.com.
Spark Brilliance, yep. And there's lots of information about that, and the results that the companies have had are on there as well.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the rapid fire round? This is where we just shoot with, I wrote down some unique questions, and we'll just do short answers to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
Give me at least one, but what leaders are inspiring you today?
You know what's so funny? All the big complex questions I'm always so much better at than the ones that have to do with my opinions on the spot, which is so funny.
I'm the exact same way. Sometimes really? I feel like, so I was a little bit of a people pleaser when I grew up. And sometimes like, I feel like these questions are difficult, and I feel bad when I put people on the spot because I know they're difficult. However, sometimes when we take the time to freeze, we discover things that are really like we didn't even think about. So I like to ask them, but I'm not even good at answering them, Jackie. I feel bad. Leader, though.
Oh my gosh. This is great, because I'll have a great answer for you tomorrow. Right now, I'm like skinning my brain through all of my clients.
Think about a dinner table. Think about a dinner table. Like it's catered. Everything's good to go. There's water, possibly a bottle of wine. Who do you want sitting at that table with you?
Yeah. The leaders that I'm thinking of are more leaders in the work that I do. Yeah. Those are the ones that I look up to. Like, so the way my mind is going right now is like a Sean Acre, who is one of the leaders in positive psychology, like the number one researcher on happiness. And he's been somebody I've been looking up to for years. He actually endorsed my book, which was so great to me. He's Oprah's happiness guru. So if you think about who that must be and his energy and his positivity, but he's got this science background and how he brings knowledge to people in such a funny and intellectual way combined is brilliant to me. I could listen to him forever. So I would say in terms of how he leads with what he does, that's where I'm going to put it. So I don't know if that's right, like the right angle of your question, but that's the angle I'm going to take.
There's no wrong answers.
Squiggly.
It's a squiggly. So billboard, huge billboard, side of the road, massive, like globally big, where all genders, all races, all economic groups, religions, everybody's going to see this billboard. And it's big, but you only can put something short and sweet on it. What message would you like the world to hear if you could?
No pressure there. Remember, I do not have a marketing background. So anybody who goes to my website will notice that with my messaging isn't so awesome. But I would say if there's one thing that I wish some people would take away is brilliance begins with you. And it has to be you that makes the first move, and people will follow your lead. So we actually have so much power to shift the way things are going in the world and make things more positive, bring more joy, make things more brilliant, instead of kind of continuing down a lot of this path that we've been on for a while.
Brilliance begins with you. Jackie, you could cut out that whole intro part because that was brilliant. Very profound. I'm curious, just personally, have you ever been an underachiever? Because I'm super impressed. Have you ever failed at things?
So I see those as different things.
Yeah.
Yes, I have failed at things, but I've never been an underachiever. So when I have failed at things, I'm very hard on myself, very self-critical. I dissect it immediately. What can I learn from this? How can I get better from this? I don't like to sit in negative spaces for too long. So I immediately am somebody who tries to find the lesson so I can, fall up or fail forward, or, the different terms for that. So yes, I have failed. And I have tried to find lessons in those very quickly.
So I'm going to personally recommend everybody at home, grab the book. It's a good read for anybody. If you're part of it, if you're in leadership for a team, I literally gave it to my girlfriend. Like, you need to read this. And in addition, if you have a team, it sounds like Jackie can come in and help your full team as well. But for anybody who's like, oh my God, I don't want to turn this off and like, I want to take action right now. I call them integration assignments, because I don't want this just to be infotainment. I want someone to take a nugget from this and implement it today, whether or not they read the book, whether or not they hire you. What do you recommend for the listener at home? Like just a easy win they can get as early as right now or as early as today to take what we talked about and implement it?
I think based on where our conversation went today, what I would recommend is the people you care about asking the simple, most basic questions like, how do I best support you? What does help look like to you? How do you like feedback best? What can I do that would feel best for you right now? And starting to ask these questions. And if you want Ben to post even in the show notes, the questions in that end of that chapter that are kind of guideline questions that I love to recommend for people to sit down with their family, their kids, their coworkers, their boss, their direct reports, parents, anybody, and just asking these simple questions really matters. And in the moment, just click on your brain instead of doing what you think is best, because we default to that with best of intentions, like my lens on help, my lens on support, I'll step right in and do it. And it might backfire. So asking somebody in the moment, again, insert that powerful pause, interrupt your great intentions and say, what would be most helpful for you right now? And you might be so surprised at the answer that the person shares and how different it is than what that would look like for you. And just starting to do that today.
Jackie, this went by so fast. Do you want to?
I know.
Can we do this again sometime?
Yes, absolutely.
I
We have a
appreciate you
lot we can
coming on the
cover.
show. And
Yeah, me
well,
too.
I joked before we started. I wrote down like a long list of topics that we could possibly touch on, and we touched on like a tenth of them. Because the book is brilliant. Thank you for gracing us with your energy, and I appreciate you coming
Oh,
on. It's been fun.
thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming, so I'm thrilled. Thank you.